at that time I would call art worker, So since I'm a bit familiar with art because my father, so I just picked up this and never successful. I spent years. I call myself an artist, but not really. I don't have many works or nothing people would appreciate. Till very late, 2004, I started to have shows, which surprised me also. You're always someone you're capable to be, or when they say you can make chandeliers, you're a chandelier maker. It's very convincing. It's more convincing than anything else. That's why they call me political activist, I guess. Actually, I never really rethink about my work. It's already past. It's a crooked coffin. I think, yeah, you can use it as a table to take a nap or something. The media is the message. In many cases, which is true, not even in the classic sense. It carries the full intention and the meaning. Once you change it, it's very disturbing. Yeah, those are really useless objects. I'm very much interested in this so-called useless object. It takes perfect craftsmanship, beautiful material, and carefully measured and crafted. At the same time, it's really useless.
So I'm gonna stop it there because that's really of his artwork is showing how useless some of these materials are, and the craftsmanship that's behind them. That's his opinion, right? Is that you have all of these objects that signify who you are as a culture, but he's wanting to question and criticize, who is standing behind these objects, who is making them seem very valuable. Why should we look at a Han Dynasty urn as something that's fragile and a remarkable piece of art that signifies, years of tradition? Why should we see that as something worthy of protecting? And so by having that piece of dropping a Han Dynasty urn, he really not to create a pun, but he shatters all of those expectations of what tradition is supposed to be. Let me pull up that picture just because I keep talking about it. And so destroying this really important cultural piece, the Han Dynasty urn, was something that was just seen as like a slap in the face, right, to the Chinese government. And it's a slap in the face in terms of tradition and meaning and value. And just, I don't know, imagine if someone defaced the Virgin de Guadalupe painting, right? That would be extremely, like, I can't even describe it. It would be just, a tragedy, right? And people would really rally around persecuting the person who did that, right? And by kind of Han using this as his primary mode for creating artwork, he kind of becomes this like bad boy in the art world. But what he's doing is just really making a statement. He's making a statement in his own country about his own country's policies and traditions. And he's also calling into question our believability too, right? Because he's also asking us to believe that this urn, Han Dynasty urn, is real, when in reality it could be a replica, because there have been thousands and thousands and thousands of replicas of the Han Dynasty urn, right? Just like there's the Virgin de Guadalupe, there's been thousands and thousands of replicas of her. And we put her up in our home and, create murals, create tattoos. So she is more of a symbol, and this Han Dynasty urn is more of a symbol. But is it the real actual urn? We don't really know, and he's not going to really tell us, right? And then he's also known for collecting Han Dynasty urns, so you have that to kind of contemplate as well. But him shattering the urn is kind of shattering a tradition, perhaps rooted in silence and conformity for him, right? Let's see here. Amelia says, art in the country with the repressive government is an act of courage. Yeah, it is an art full of content that uses its own voice and cannot be condemned because its understanding is ephemeral. But at the same time, whoever has a free vision understands their point of view, and it spreads powerfully as a cry for freedom. So yes, this brings up a good point where Ai Weiwei is not famous in China, right? His artwork is not shown in China. I think he's officially exiled from China actually right now. He's had many different stages of criminality throughout his career, but what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so China refuses to show Ai Weiwei's work because it does criticize the government, and that is really allows us to see, as an outsider, as, living in the United States, we can say, oh, here's this Chinese artist critiquing the government of China, and it's, we show it in our galleries. He's made a public sculpture in New York City. His art is everywhere, and it allows us to really use him as an example of bravery and courage, like you're saying, Noelia. Totally agree. Oscar says his face remains the same across the 3 stages. Yeah, his face is interesting in this photo. It's very, like, I don't know, how else would you describe his expression here? It's the same, which means the photos were probably taken one right after the other, right? Pretty quickly, like. I don't know, how would you describe his expression in these photos?
Uncaring.
Uncaring, yeah. Good. Irreverent, disinterested. Good. Yeah, and the fact that he's been able to really disconnect himself from this action, that is really going to put him in a lot of trouble or really shock a lot of people. It's a really interesting juxtaposition, I think. And then this third picture on the right, it's like you have the shattered urn on the bottom here, kind of representing like a shattered society or shattered traditions, or just a breaking apart of those traditions, along with his kind of nonchalantness of his face. It's pretty shocking, especially for Chinese art, right? So I'm going to read a little bit about what else he's done. I'm going to show you a couple other pictures too. Excuse me. So let's see here. So I has photographs of himself raising his middle finger towards Tiananmen Square, a symbol of the Chinese government. In 2005, he began a blog in China that criticized government policies. This blog was shut down by the police in 2009 after he exposed poor construction standards as the cause of the high number of deaths from the 2008 Sichuan province earthquake. So this is probably most what he's famous for, is the criticizing the government during the 2008 Sichuan province earthquake, in which 69,000 people were killed, and it left 4.8 million homeless. He also posted the names of all 5,385 children killed in the earthquake. Then in 2009, Ai Weiwei was beaten by police for his intention to testify about his observation of the earthquake aftermath. His injuries were so severe that brain surgery was required to treat them. In 2011, he filmed the government's destruction of his studio, and 2 months later, he, like his father, had been imprisoned. In 2014, before the opening of a Shanghai exhibition of Chinese contemporary artwork, his works were forcibly removed and records of his previous awards were destroyed. And then since then, it's just been on and off of him being censored, him being imprisoned. Let me show you another artwork, a couple other artworks I have of his here real quick. And then we'll talk about kind of what this all means. So, okay, here. This is an artwork that's mentioned in the video. It's called Forever Bicycles, and it was made in 2014. And I think right off the bat, we can all agree it's visually stunning. It's meant to be hundreds of bicycles. I'm not sure exactly how many bicycles are used in this sculpture. It's also public art because it's in the public, right? I wonder if I can zoom in anymore. Kind of, not really. Oh, my eyes are hurting. So anyways, he along with a team of artist assistants manufactured this sculpture, and it's meant to represent bicycles, obviously in mass, right? Okay, here, I think this one's a better one. Okay, cool. So visually, as an artist, it works really well, right? Because we have some amazing elements in this artwork. We have repetition, we have circles, movement, right? Also, like in this picture of an installation, you have like really interesting contrasting principles with like positive and negative space. So you can tell he's a trained artist, like he knows all of these elements, right, and how to put them all together. But then he's also, why he's called a political activist or an artist and activist, is because the bicycles symbolize an aspect of Chinese society that everyone uses. So there's a lot of like bicycle riding in China, right, to get around. It's also meant to symbolize like progress, you know, and just the amount of bicycles that he created and all of the work it took to manufacture this, for him is symbolizing the industry of manufacturing in China, and just how much there is an emphasis of like putting materials out there. These bicycles, it's hard to kind of tell, but they don't have gears, they don't have brakes, they don't have really seats on them at all. So for him, making these bicycles and removing those parts renders them useless. So it takes, again, that kind of like functionality out of the artwork where you have, like he said, a pointless artwork. So in this case, he's inspired by Marcel Duchamp, of course, the ready-mades. He's also inspired by Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol is known for being the one who made pop art famous, and basically pop art is a critique of these like manufacturing systems, corporate systems that create like culture as we know it around us. Yeah, pop art, exactly. So let me show you another piece by Ai Weiwei. So this piece can be seen as useless and also wasteful, right? Which I think gets us to think about the factories, the manufacturing culture in China, and how much waste is produced, right? And is it really progressive? Does it really progress us forward, right? Does the fact that we have a new model iPhone every year really progress us forward as a society? That's something that I like to think about a lot. Oh, these ones do have seats. Okay, cool. Another one I wanted to show you is, the last one I wanted to show you is his sunflower seeds piece. Okay, and then we'll stop there. Okay, so Ai Weiwei, like many artists, he works with a bunch of different people to actually create his artworks. He cannot physically like hand make everything in his artwork. So that's when you start to employ like artist assistants, interns. There's some artists who hire people to make their artwork for them and they never touch their artwork. In that case, that brings up questions of authenticity, of like, okay, did this person actually, is he even the artist? The most popular example, well, one of the most popular examples of this is Jeff Koons. I'll put his name in the chat. Jeff Koons doesn't create any of his own artworks. Like he doesn't physically make them, right? And so Ai Weiwei is kind of leaning towards that, where it's conceptual art because it cares about the idea, but not about the thing that's being presented, and even less about how it's made. So this artwork you can see is a bunch of sunflower seeds laid out on the floor of this art building. I'm not sure if it's a museum. Oh yeah, I think this is at the Tate. So from far away, you cannot tell that it's sunflower seeds, right? And then you get up close, and it is these like little like sunflower seeds that have been kind of spread along the gallery here. He's also done it where it's been in piles like this, where when you pull away, there's like an abstract mound, but when you get up close, you can see all of the little seeds there, right? And so when you're walking up to this, when you're seeing it, how you process it is going to be different, but you start to recognize that they are sunflower seeds, and then they're carefully kind of like, you can tell they're layered, right? They're like carefully like laid down and layered. And he's had artist assistants come in and like build this for him, right? And so then you start to think, okay, why? Why so many sunflower seeds on the floor? And then you start to think about the power that the sunflower seed can have and what it can represent. And from him being from China and interested in critiquing Chinese society, the Chinese government, we can see that this piece has a lot to do, again, with conformity, with just like a sheer massive amount of people and production, and I think it has a lot to do with uniformity, honestly, for him, and how it's really hard to stand out amongst this, right? And how Ai Weiwei doesn't want to fit in amongst the sunflower seeds. He wants to disrupt a lot of the norms that have happened. So, okay, so that's what I want to share about him. And real quick, before I touch on the extra credit, and I'm just going to take a few more minutes every time, like 4 minutes. But before we move on to the extra credit, I want y'all to put in the chat box, what do you think would be an artistic gesture that would get someone arrested here in the United States? What do you think would just be like the worst thing an artist can do? I'm really curious because everyone thinks something different. Think about what's important in American culture. And maybe you've seen an artwork that has been really shocking, but what do you think an artist can do to get themselves jailed here in the US? Good. Graffiti, yeah. Yeah, specifically spraying graffiti on private property, totally. We definitely like protect private property with all we got, definitely. Something to do with the flag, against the American flag. Blasphemy to a religious statue, yeah, definitely. Any kind of destruction to a religious statue, especially for Christianity, right? Right now we have the destruction of Confederate statues. So that's an example of really the culture reflecting the values of the society. Good. What about nudity? Do you think an artist would be arrested for nudity? Oh, Hans, we were thinking the same thing at the same time. Totally. Performance of public nudity, especially with what they're doing while they're nude, you know, that could be like something where they're just like, okay, your right to free speech and expression is taken away. Good. So definitely artists in this country have been censored. Not so many to the point of like being arrested, but their funding has been pulled. They have been like canceled, right? This is before cancel culture, but they've been canceled. One of those pieces is a piece where they took a, like a necklace of Jesus on the cross and they put it into a cup of pee, and then they took a picture of a zoomed in like Jesus on the cross in this liquid, and the liquid was urine, and that was something that was really shocking for people to see. It was called Piss Christ, if you want to see it. But it definitely raises the question of like, can we deface these important symbols, and what is the purpose of that, and is it important? And so next time we're going to talk about iconoclasm, and I think that that's a really important topic right now to think about, because there are the destruction of sculptures, destruction of art, because they want to destroy the values and the values behind them, right? And destroy like a sense of history that is incorrect. So we're going to talk about that more. I think it's interesting how Ai Weiwei's artwork is held in our esteem here in the States because it aligns with our values perceived. Yeah, I think it's so kind of ironic that we're like celebrating his artwork, but it also reflects the United States in a way, right? Like we are a democracy and everyone can have their own beliefs, but at the same time, we're kind of like pressured and often pushed into these boxes of uniformity and conformity. So yeah, okay, cool. So I want to mention just briefly about the extra credit project. I'm going to release the prompt today, earlier rather than later, but basically I was inspired by self-portraits. I was inspired by self-portraits in art history and how artists have been painting themselves for hundreds and hundreds of years. Famous examples of this are Frida Kahlo, Vincent van Gogh. We had Diego Velázquez, right? Like painting himself amongst the royal family. And so I want you all to create a self-portrait of yourself. And there are some nuances to this that I want you to think about. I want you to think about not just documenting yourself, but putting some kind of visual clues in your self-portrait that tells you about yourself and perhaps a legacy that you might want to leave behind. Or just, if you really like incense, for example, like setting a box of incense like by your shoulder, and kind of leaving these like visual clues that tell us about who you were in that moment. So you can either draw or paint your own self-portrait. You can take a photograph as your self-portrait, again, with some thought of like where it is, what's in the picture. You can do a video if you want. I think a video would be a little less successful, but so yeah, drawing, painting, photograph, or a collage, right? You can collage together some things. Really, I'm open to really any form, but if you have a question about if it will be acceptable, you can email me. And I'm going to offer 10 points for this. So I'm going to offer a lot. And that's because I want you to really put some thought into how you're depicting yourself as a person and how you might want to be remembered over time. So again, I'm going to post that prompt for y'all today. And then if you have any questions, you can send me an email or put them on the Q&A forum. But and then lastly, about inquisitive, everything's all set on inquisitive now. But if you see that things aren't aligning right from your previous assignments, you can click through those assignments and it should kind of resync the points. I did extend the due dates, or I'm going to extend, I don't know if I did already, sorry. I'm going to extend the due dates from last week because I noticed a lot of people last week didn't get them in on time, and that's because we had all of these technical errors. So I'm going to extend the due dates for last week assignments to this week. So you'll have time to like redo those and get the full points. But yeah, everyone's doing a great job. And thank you for spending time with me for experiencing those breakout rooms. I hope you thought they're pretty interesting and you're a little less intimidated. But yeah, I'll stay behind for a couple minutes, but that's the end of today's lecture. So y'all have a good day. Thank you. I like to wave and say goodbye. Stop share that here. All right. Anyone have any questions before I go? Thank you, Lilo. Have a good day.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, I sent you an email regards a question in a quiz, and you replied me with the. So I didn't get.
Sure. What can you remind me what quiz that was again?
It was number 3, I believe.
Let me look at it now. I'm glad you came because it's easier for me to kind of do this here, and then I'm going to look at your quiz and then see. And so your question was about the question itself, and you thought you answered it right?
Yeah, there was like 3 answers were right out of 4 multiple choice. But then, I thought, the one I chose, that was making more sense to me. Like that was like.
Okay. Let's see. What did the man-made mountains in this chapter have in common? They had a dramatic and lasting impact on the geography of their locations. They were built as memorials to the dead. One of the other answers. They were built for administrative purposes or built for. Yeah. Okay. So I do agree with you that yours can be partially right but it in the book they didn't say that that's right because it doesn't apply to all cultures, who are making these man-made mountains or pyramids. So it doesn't apply to all cultures, but it does apply to some. So I can see why you would have thought this was right. So what I can do is I can just bump this up to like 0.75, since technically it's incorrect, but based on the book, but there is some argument to be made for them being memorials to the dead, or maybe not even memorials, but they would be like, what's the word? They would be places where the dead were buried. So there is some kind of connection there. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. These questions sometimes are not perfect. So I think it's really great that you brought this to my attention, because yeah, it can be a little confusing in how to answer that. So, okay, does that help?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Thanks for letting me know again.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Take care.